It's the end of 2022. Congratulations on surviving. Now it's time to talk Brad Stack. Welcome everybody to the last podcast of 2022. The Sam's Report has survived another year. We have all survived another year, and congratulations on making it another lap. A lap around the sun, if you will. And so as I have done, I think every year since this podcast has been recorded and this YouTube channel has existed at the end of the year, because there's nothing else going on, I always kind of do a review of just stuff that I use to make this happen, like what I use on a daily driver professionally and YouTubely and podcastly. And so it just kind of every couple of years I go back and look and just kind of see how things evolve, because some things evolve more faster than others, especially tech related to recording a podcast and a video and that, as opposed to my primary desktop PC, which hasn't changed too much, but a lot of peripherals have. And so that's what I call the Brad Stack. It's just Brad's technology stuff. And it's let's go. So we're going to pull up a picture here of a rare shot of my actual upstairs desktop, where everything that you see ever put on this channel, audio, video, whatever, has been recorded. So this is my primary workstation. This is where I edit all videos. This is where I edit all podcasts. This is where I do all my work. So I'm the vice president and general manager over at Stardock Software. And so this is my productivity space. This is where I get stuff done. And so there's been a lot of changes, especially on the peripheral front, because I'm doing a lot more meetings these days. I've really upped the game, if you will, when it comes to webcams and everything else. So kicking things off, I kind of went all in on Elgato. So I had a bunch of Logitech stuff, and I really just kind of swapped it up for Elgato stuff, which I believe is now owned by Corsair. And the reason being is I've just, generally speaking, from a hardware perspective, I had a pretty good experience with it. So if you're looking at me right now, you can't see it right here, but there's a Stream Deck XL that I've been using to switch scenes on this this setup for years. And so I finally just figured, you know what, this has worked out well. Let's bring some of this stuff upstairs. So I got the face cam from Elgato in the fall. Now this is not their new face cam 4K, whatever high-end one. This is their last generation one, because I got it for a good deal. And it does 4K, and it was a massive upgrade over the Logitech C920. And so if you can find one on sale, highly recommend it. I also swapped to the Elgato Wave LR, XLR, whatever that microphone is, with their low profile stand. That low profile stand is awesome, by the way. And so I use, this is a Rode one here, I believe, and it's fine. But this low profile one slides, it fits well under the monitors, and so I can swing it in and out, and yeah. And then so most recently purchased as of December is I got this guy. So this is their Stream Deck Plus. The reason why I got this one is that it has the dials, and the reason why the dials are important is that you can see in the top there's that's a Keylight Air. It's their smaller model, which does more than enough light output. But one of the challenges I actually had in this setup, you can see where my camera is there. It's front and center like most individuals or most setups, but there's also a monitor offset to the right, which is where I typically keep Teams and whatever else. But the problem is that monitor kicks out a lot of light. I'm a 100% max brightness kind of person on all monitors, all times. And so my face was just massively blown out on one side. So I got the Keylight Air in the top left, and then using those dials, actually, I can adjust the brightness and the color temperature, which if you look here, a little bit closer shot. So the two dials on the right do the temperature, and then the one on the left, like the middle right, if you will, the second from the right, does the brightness. Now this is really, really helpful because you can't see it in this image, but there's actually a window further back from that right side monitor, which actually you can kind of see the light cascading in, so which created a really offset, blown out right side of my face when on call. So I got that light, and now with all the dials and digits and whatever else, I can now adjust that light really quickly, super easy, and it works quite well. And then everything else in here is pretty straightforward. Play, pause, forward, back. That's all linked into Spotify. That top left button is a folder. You press that, and it actually has a bunch of playlists that I typically listen to on a frequent basis, so I can just one punch away from pulling up a playlist. And then mic, mute, and then just CPU data, just because it's, I don't know, I just find it, I just like it. And so going down here, so I did swap out my keyboard. I'm a bit of a keyboard fanatic, and my wife hates it, and it's financially going to ruin us. I've had this, that keyboard is a Keychron K10. It is wireless, And I also have a Ducky 1.2, which is actually what is now on this basement PC. And I've always wanted a wireless mechanical keyboard setup. And I had that Keychron K10 for a while downstairs. I did not like the keycaps at all. They were, I believe, ABS plastic. They were kind of like a glossy, and they just didn't feel good. And I always enjoyed the Ducky 1.2, which is a fantastic keyboard. But it's wired, and so I swapped the keycaps, and it's better, but I still don't love this keyboard because it's the Gateron Blue keys, and they're too soft, and I'm a very hard typer, and so what I'm attempted to do is they actually sell a Keychron K10 with swappable switches, so I'm tempted to buy the Keychron K10 wireless, and then swap out all the Gateron Blue with potentially Cherry MX greens, because I think they're a little bit firmer than the blues, but definitely maybe the blues for sure, because I really like the blues. And so that has been a recent change, but I really like the wireless setup, and it charges via USB-C. That keyboard will last me 3 to 4 weeks without a charge, and so it is backlit. I turn all that stuff off. I just need a keyb, and I don't need to look at my keyboard, and then accent it out with the keycaps from the Ducky 1.2. And there you go. That's probably more information than most people care about, but I really like my keybs. And then the mouse is the MX Master 3. And then over there on the far top right corner, I recently added the Xbox Series S to the lineup. I did not have one, despite leaking it. I did not own one personally. And so I got one of those, and it's also plugged into, surprise, surprise, an Elgato capture card. Now, I went through 2 capture cards from Elgato. There's a PCIe one. I think it's PCIe. The one that's inside the PC, and that card just did not work well. It was supposed to do 4K and be a little bit higher resolution than the USB one, but the internal card, I just ran into a lot of problems. I could always get it fixed, but it always required either a reboot or enable the hardware or whatever else, and just wasn't reliable. So I returned it and got the Elgato USB capture card, the HDMI one. It does 1080p, and that's how I record now all the dashboard videos that I do for Xbox content. And honestly, the USB one is what I'd recommend because it has worked flawlessly, and it was actually that Elgato capture card that working flawlessly that kind of pushed me into getting the Stream Deck and getting the face cam and getting everything else, because Elgato stuff just kind of works together. So moving down, next to the Elgato Stream Deck Plus, I always forget that because everything's a Plus or 365 or whatever. That is an ambient weather station. I love this little thing. My wife got this for me for Christmas last year. This is the WS2902, and it has a thing that sits outside and it captures rain and wind. It's just a nice little desktop widget, if you will, that just shows you relevant data, how much rain it has occurred in the past day, week, month, or whatever. It's just a neat little thing. Quite like it. And then also on the desk, you can't see in the top right corner, but in the bottom left, you'll see a Sonos Play 1. I use Sonos speakers throughout my house. And despite the fact that they aren't directly linked to the PC, it has worked out perfectly fine. One of the things I want to try to figure out how to do, but it's not straightforward because Sonos is Sonos. I would love to have a one push button on my Elgato Stream Deck that would initiate a playlist on a speaker set. So if you're not familiar with Sonos, they're all wireless speakers and you can group them. So I have a group called basically Office and Kitchen, which, surprise, surprise, has the speakers in my office and in the kitchen. And I'd love to be able to hit that one button and have it start a playlist that I've predetermined on that speaker group. But I haven't quite figured out yet. If anybody knows, would love to. The monitors are nothing special. They're the Dell 27-inch 4K monitors. 60 hertz. They have worked. I've had these things for years and they continue to work exceptionally well. My primary gaming box is actually the Xbox Series X. No surprise. They're hooked up to an LG C9 OLED display. Absolutely fantastic. Elite Series 2 controller. And my preferred headset currently, and still to this day, is the Rig 800LX. I have one I've recommended to a bunch of friends. You can usually find them pretty cheap now, about $100. They are fantastic. The biggest downfall is twofold. One, they're not USB-C, and two, they have to have a dongle, so they don't connect directly to the Xbox. Yeah, so swinging it back for a second, because I forgot to bring this up. So people have been, I tweeted about this thing, the Stream Deck Plus. Like, would you recommend this, Brad? Maybe. It's really good if you have a bunch of Elgato stuff. The software is a little flaky still. It's very clearly that they got this thing done and just kind of pushed it out the door. And there's not a lot of functionality for the dials. All of this has the massive caveat that if you have other Elgato stuff, like the microphone, the lights, and all that, then there's plenty of functionality. But if you don't have any of that stuff, the native integrations are pretty weak on the knobs. Now, the keys have been around forever, and there's a bunch of different stuff you can do. But unless you have a bunch of Elgato stuff and you're trying to do exactly what I'm doing here, which is controlling lights, the second from the left dial does exposure on the camera, so I can really fine tune everything. If you're not doing that kind of stuff, you might want to wait, personally speaking. And then the furthest left is just system volume, which does work. So it's a case-by-case scenario. If you have a bunch of Elgato stuff, it's a great purchase. It's not cheap, but it's a good purchase. If you don't, I would wait a little bit more until the third-party ecosystem has time to tap into this kind of stuff, because the offerings out of the box are kind of weak, if I'm honest. So there you go. There is that. Now, when it comes to software for editing this podcast, like you see right here, what does Brad do when I finish? Well, when I finish, I go and sit down up here, and then I have this basement PC, which has not changed, which is still a 7700K. 16 gigs of RAM and about 2 terabytes of storage. And so 1 terabyte is a solid state drive, and then there's actually, still a mechanical drive in there that came with the PC when it came into my possession. And so I just use a solid state drive. I go upstairs, it's a network share, I drag it up there, and I primarily use Adobe Premiere Elements. Not many people still don't know about this. If you need just a pretty robust but not Premiere Pro type editor, it's a great piece of software. It's a one-time purchase. It's not a subscription from Adobe. It's just a great, easy to use video editor, and this stuff, it works pretty well. There's some high-end functionality in there too, like green screen and chroma key and keyframes and a whole bunch of other stuff. If I need to go up a level, I use DaVinci Resolve Pro. Or DaVinci Resolve, I don't think it is Pro, just whatever, DaVinci Resolve. And then down here, when actually recording, here on this box, I'm using XSplit, although I'm very tempted to switch to OBS. I've used XSplit for years, and it's just a comfort thing. But I'm tempted by OBS, mostly because I like to change things up, because why not? But I'm tempted by OBS. This is a Blue Yeti microphone on a Rode stand. It's actually still using a Logitech C920, but I flood this thing with lights, which are wired up to the Stream Deck. You see if I turn off all the lights here, it kind of goes to hell. If you turn them back on, it's all wired up through, these are just Wi-Fi switches wired up to the Stream Deck, and it works really well. Works really well. Work laptop, which I don't have available here, is the Surface Studio laptop. I really like this thing. It has performed quite well. And then personal technology, like things that are literally on me, is I finally upgraded my Apple Watch. I had a 4, and now for Christmas, wife and we got 8s. I'm still using an iPhone 13, and I also added AirPod Pros 2 to the lineup, which I think are actually on this desk. Yeah, you can see up there in the top left. I had the original AirPods, like the ones, and they had about a 19-minute battery life, and shame on me for giving into Apple and buying the AirPod Pros 2, but we're taking a bunch of flights this year, and I figured the noise canceling on those would be good, as I typically use the Sony XM3s, which you can't see in this image. They're actually hanging under the desk. That's what I use to listen to music or whatever audio most days on my workstation, just because those things are exceptional. So that is, I think, the Brad stack of whatever I use to get things done for 2022. Is there anything I'm looking to change? I'm tempted to upgrade the PC. The PC is, which I don't even think I'm doing anything on. That PC is a 7900X, so it's a more than capable machine with a 2070 Super, 32 gigs of RAM. It has served my needs exceptionally well, but like I'm getting that itch of like, man, what if we went to like a 13th gen or the new high-end AMD chips? Woo, those would be nice. Help me do things a little bit faster, a little bit more better. But at the same time, I rarely struggle for when I'm running into performance. I don't game much on this PC, very rarely. Sometimes flight sim, but when I game upstairs now, I just game on that Series S on that box, and it works fine. Like I don't need a higher end GPU. I mean, I'd want a higher end GPU, but I don't. All I'm going to do is see my background at the same thing. So I'm not going to see too much performance gain there. Maybe a little bit on video editing, but even now, editing a 20-minute video such as this one will only take, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes to render out at 1080p. So it's nothing too, like, okay, so it goes to 8 minutes or 7 minutes. What did I really gain for spending $2,000? So we'll see. I'd love to upgrade that thing, but it's just hard to justify right now at this point, especially when you got a kid and you could go take a vacation or half a vacation for $2,000, which would what it would cost to upgrade the thing. Even more if I wanted to get a decent GPU, because I really would need, I guess I could reuse the case, but I would definitely need a new board and CPU. So there's at least $1,000. And then a new GPU would be probably another $1,000 if I got the new Radeon one that's about $1,000 is what I was eyeing. So it's like, there you go. If there's anything you guys see I don't have or don't use, I'd be curious to know, what you guys use. Obviously, I'm running Windows 11. I'm actually running Start 11, Promo or whatever. That's the software that I work at the company that we make, which is I love. And so Windows 11 up top, and that's I think the brat stack for. Am I missing anything for mostly what I use on a daily basis? Now, it wouldn't be a Sam's Report podcast without a questions of the week, which is something that I always do, and it's genuinely my favorite part because it's the interaction with the community. When I'm sitting here recording this, I'm literally talking into a webcam, and I'd like to think that there's other people on the side outside of there, and when questions happen, that's where we at. So we are going to kick off the questions for the last podcast of 2022. There will be I've got a video lined up for I think probably next week about predictions for what's going to happen I think next year, especially on the Xbox side. But this one is the wrap-up of 2022, and let's dive into the questions, my favorite part of every week. So Mr. PKI, or should I say Mr. Regular, kicking off the questions here. What did you think of High on Life on Game Pass for the holidays? The critics hated it, but it was certainly a short but fun game for the holiday for many. It certainly wasn't G-rated if the family is around when playing. So, okay. High on Life, I've only played probably about I have not completed the game yet for a couple reasons. One, I really like Vampire Survivors. I love Vampire Survivors, and when I have 30 minutes to sit down and play, I'm honestly probably playing that. I've played a decent amount of the High on Life to get much of the memes. I will probably finish it at some point, hopefully before it leaves Game Pass, but it is not G-rated. Mr. PKI is dead on. It's pretty funny. If you like Rick and Morty, you will probably like that style you will like the game. I mean, it's made by, the voicing is the same people, so you will probably like that game. Anyways, people should try. I mean, it's on Game Pass. So what does it cost? It costs nothing. It's one of those games. It's another perfect example. Same with Vampire Survivors. I never would have played it. I never would have played High on Life. Never played Vampire Survivors. There's probably a couple others, but that's just in the month of December that I never would have tried if it wasn't for Game Pass. And I'm pretty much, other than Call of Duty, if it's not on Game Pass, I'm honestly probably not buying it unless my group of friends do, but we've all just been aggregating around Call of Duty for years, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. The Mattlebear says, what are your predictions for all things Xbox this next year? Mattlebear, you're gonna have to wait. I don't have my list handy, and I'm not gonna do it all in this episode, but I'm putting together a list. Will the games come? Will the ABK deal drama finally end? Well, the ABK drama, I would suspect, will end one way or another, and I still think that they will get it. He says, second question is, he says, I recently started working at Target and found that beyond Xbox and some Windows laptops, MS has no retail presence. Why is that? Microsoft has tried to have a retail presence. They had their own stores, which they have now shut down, I think all of them except a couple bespoke experience centers. I know there's, I think, one in New York, maybe one in London, something like that. It's just Microsoft just isn't a great retail company. They haven't necessarily had a lot of success with consumers in general. Xbox is the one massive caveat to where Microsoft has had consumer success. But outside of that, you look at things like Band, you look at things like Zune, you look at Groove Music Maker, like these things have all just, they don't do well with consumers. And so the consumer presence isn't there. Like it's just not there. And then also, you got to remember that their consumer presence is also tied up in their OEM partners, right? So every time you see Dell, Lenovo, HP, Alienware, any of these brands sitting out on shelves, that's a Microsoft presence, just not directly. So they're behind the scenes. So it's not that they don't have it. It's just that Microsoft as a primary direct-to-consumer brand has always been a little bit shaky, in my opinion. Kadupa. Here's a question after a long time. Well, Kadupa, we've got an answer for you. Just maybe. I don't know. Whatever. What do you think will be Microsoft's next acquisition? Ooh, that's a good one. Can Microsoft buy Spotify and run it well? I wish they could do it, and I think it's a great thing to buy. If I were a betting man, I don't have any specific targets in mind. If Microsoft is going to be acquiring another company outside of ABK, first off, it's going to be pretty small. It's not going to be a big one. I bet it's in the security field. That would be my guess. That has been a significant focus for Microsoft, has been growing their security presence and tooling opportunities for their clients. And I suspect that if Microsoft's going to buy somebody, it's going to be them. I don't see them buying Spotify unless they come out with some renewed hope of becoming a consumer company again, but I think that Microsoft is smarter than that, and they're not going to do it because they've tried. It just doesn't work, and so maybe, I don't know. The one thing in the back of my mind which says, well, maybe they could, is the LinkedIn acquisition, I believe, has gone pretty well for Microsoft. They've grown the platform quite a bit since they've acquired it. The question would be, could they do the same for Spotify? I don't know. It's pretty... When they bought LinkedIn, it's like, who are they going up against? It's like kind of Facebook, but not a whole lot. LinkedIn sort of had its own thing going, and it fit Microsoft's enterprise market exceptionally well. When you look at Spotify, it's like, man, okay, who are they going up against? Apple. And it's like Microsoft has a tough time competing directly against Apple, and it seems like it could be a tough challenge. So, Dark Cloud says, how is 2022 over and how did we survive? I don't know, and I still don't know. Knock on some wood, cross your fingers, throw some salt over your shoulders, whatever your lucky rabbit's foot thing is. Do it for 2023. I'm hoping that 2023 is a bit more optimistic. 2022 is a little, coming off the back end of 2021. Hopefully we can kind of brush that aside and, have a good 2023, but yes, I don't know how 2022 is over. As they say, the days are slow, but the years are fast. Something like that, especially with a kid and seeing how quickly she is growing up, just baffling how quickly things. Sydney 2K comes in and says, Happy New Year, but Happy New Year to you too, Sydney. How are you looking forward to 2023 in the tech world, apart from the Activision Blizzard King deal being over? Well, bleeding into a little bit of like what I hope to see in next year. I hope we see Windows. There's two things I want to see out of Microsoft. Windows stabilizing and having some sort of recognizable update pattern. Or maybe, I don't know if we'll see a Windows 12 next year. And then loops, every year, I can't believe I've looked back at my notes and I was like, oh man, here come my Fluid components. I'm going to get my Fluid app. And then last year was like, I'm going to get my app. And then now here we are again. It's like, man, I'm going to get my app. I'm still using Notion for my collaboration syncing across device database tool of thoughts and whatever notes and everything else. And yeah. Still waiting on loops. So I hope we see something happen with Windows that just makes it a little bit more recognizable about their update cadence, because it's still just Microsoft just features done, bam. Like it just scattershots everything, and it makes it chaotic, and nobody really understands when and how things are updated anymore, and there's no stability from a user perspective. Things just kind of show up. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes people have features, sometimes people don't. And so trying to unwind that nest of where are you in the universe of Windows is incredibly challenging. So, I appreciate this individual. I won't say his name first. He says, because I know you have a hard time pronouncing names. I absolutely do. It is pronounced Cadgart, I believe Cadgart. So Brad, hope you having a good holiday. Hope you did too, Cadgart. And says, how do you like your Stream Deck Plus? So I answered that a little bit, but TLDR, it is good if you have a lot of Elgato stuff. If you don't, you might want to wait for the software to mature a little bit. What is your opinion on gamers suing Microsoft for the Activision thing? So I got a bunch of messages about this. So there's a group of individuals who put together, I believe it's a class action lawsuit against Microsoft saying, no, you can't buy Activision. Rehashing a lot of some not weird, but the concerns about Microsoft becoming a monopoly, blah, 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 blah. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't, the legality of it, I mean, it's something Microsoft has to deal with. They can't just ignore this thing. So they are going to have to go to court and defend this, but I suspect that it doesn't carry nearly as much weight as something like the FTC. And so this is just potentially going to maybe delay things a little bit, but it's minor in my opinion, in the grand scheme of things. I mean, put it this way, anybody can sue anybody in the United States for anything if you are willing to pay the court fees and the lawyer fees. Doesn't mean you will win, doesn't mean you are right. I mean, I could go out and sue, I don't know, my neighbor for coughing when I was away on Christmas. Like, I don't know. Like, you can do whatever you want. Doesn't mean it's legal. Like, it's the courts just have to hear it. Doesn't mean it's going to be valid and justified and ruled out, but that's just kind of the nature of the way it is. Any games you're looking forward to in 2023, confirmed or not? Starfield. Starfield is the one I'm looking forward to most. Redfall, which is now going to be, looks like it's going to be happening in the spring, going to be Red Spring. Just, they're not going to rename it. Starfield, like, I know it's cliche at this point, but I hope that Starfield lives up to the hype, because it's like based on the limited amount of information we have, which makes me a little bit concerned, it looks like it's my type of game, the game that I would like. So I am hoping that I'm hoping that it plays out as well as we hope. And I hope that there's a whole universe. I don't know if we'll get a multiplayer aspect to it like I'm imagining in my head, but I'm looking forward to it. So that, hopefully around the same time as Microsoft Loops does. Let's just see there. And he says, still waiting for this Friends and Family Game Pass, hopefully after the acquisition. So this will bleed into the Xbox predictions. But yes, it's out there, but it just, Microsoft limited it very much so to specific markets. And I think this ties back into Microsoft just hoping, fingers crossed, that ABK deal goes through, and then they're going to recycle and reboot the whole subscription tiers now that they have the new product line. And I fully expect a price increase sometime after. They may not do it right away, because there might be kind of dicey. It's like, hey, you acquired this company, now you're raising the prices and all that stuff and everything. So we'll see. And an old Amiga user wrapping it up for 2022. He says, knowing what you know now, what would you ask Microsoft about the development of Windows 11? I would ask them, what is your grand plan here? Right? Because Microsoft made this pitch that by jacking up the security baseline, that they would make PCs more secure. And I think we can agree that on paper, yes, that is fundamentally true. But the question I have for Microsoft is, what was your intended goal? Was it adoption of Windows 11 or increasing security? Because they are incompatible. If Microsoft wanted everybody to run Windows 11, they would have just kept the baseline the same and maybe done something different, and everybody could have upgraded to Windows 11. We all know that the upgrade saturation of Windows 11 right now is low. It's low, like somewhere between 25 and 30% seems to be like the industry consensus, somewhere around there, more than a year after. Many people expected more. Microsoft's got a big issue now where they have Windows 10 coming to end of life here in roughly 2.5 years, something like that, somewhere around that ballpark. And they've got a majority of people not on Windows 11. So how are they, what is going to happen here? And what was this forecasted in their information when they thought about changing all these baselines? The other thing too, I would love to ask them is like, what was your true plan for updates to the platform? Because they came out and said 1 update per year, and that was absolutely incorrect. We get updates in these. They probably say 1 version update per year, but that is so not true. They do these moment updates and people get features left, right, and in between, and some people never get them. And yeah, I would love to know what they were really thinking with their update cadence, because they got a lot of positive press for it. They went from 2 updates per year to 1, and now instead of 1, we're getting like 4. So there you go. There you go, my friend. So what happens with this podcast next year? Probably not much. I mean, I enjoy doing these things on Friday mornings. Although this one, ironically, as I say, that is on Saturday morning because of last week's holiday. We did a little traveling, took my kid to see a Harry Potter thing. And yeah, I don't know. I did this podcast when only my mom listened, and I will continue to do it as long as mom keeps listening. And so there you go, my friends. That wraps up 2022. I hope that your previous year was good. I hope that you stayed healthy and you were able to get through the year. And I hope that your 2023 is better. I look forward to chatting with all of you next year. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch all of you right back here next time, because the only BS on this podcast is me.